Scaramucci on the blue-collar president. You got to be kidding me. I mean, I know Sean Hannity gives you some love here over at Fox. This guy is so far from the blue-collar president. Anthony, why is he the blue-collar president?
I mean, Rush gave me a little bit of love, too. It's not just Sean. It's more about the people I grew up with and less about the president. I mean, you know, I wanted to pick a title that would be incendiary to liberals.
You got it.
I got it, because, you know, you're thinking of the golden toilet seat, and you're thinking about his apartment on Fifth Avenue, which looks like Louis XIV smoked crystal meth and then decorated the apartment. So, but what I'm thinking about is the kids that I grew up with and my cousins who are clamming out in Oyster Bay right now in the freezing cold that love the president. And so what I did is a lot of research on him and his father, and I try to explain the neighborhood I grew up in and why the people I grew up with that didn't go to college, that are working hourly jobs, love the president, and why he won in places like Wisconsin. And
he needs you in the White House right now because his tax bill has failed. He's talking about second tax bill and all that. The fact is the public, including your blue-collar audience, has figured out that tax bill was for the plutocracy. What does he need to do as an encore to right the tax bill perception?
Well, there's three things that happened that are unfortunate. Number one, they didn't get enough repatriation of capital from outside the United States to begin the investment cycle that they really wanted. Number two, if you look at the numbers for those families that I'm discussing in the book, you're talking about $1,000 to $3,000. Okay, it is meaningful, Tom. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, but it's not enough to really get aggregate demand started at those levels. And then the last thing, and I think is also a very important thing, is U.S. corporations are still in a very defensive position because they're worried about a recession that Gary's talking about.
Well,
Anthony,
you know,
go ahead, Gary.
Well, if you look at this, I mean, the numbers are pretty clear. I mean, the lower 50% of taxpayers pay only about 5% of income taxes. It's so skewed to the top. If you're going to cut income taxes, you got to cut them on the top. Those are the people that pay the tax. And unless you want to go to a negative income tax, you really can't do very much for these people that are on the lower end.
Or you could do the earned income tax credit, which Warren Buffett talks about.
It's basically you're writing a check.
But listen, I mean, here's the bottom line. That group of people, for whatever reason, has rejected the establishment. The president saw that. He did something very unique in political history. He hijacked the Republican Party. They did not want him to be the nominee. He got the nomination there, and then he stole the base of the Democratic Party, and he moved it over to his ledger. And I describe why he was capable of doing that, given his personality and what I saw on the campaign trail.
Well, you know, I like.
By the way, I was there for 11 days, Thomas. I just want to do a little fact checking here, okay? Don't chip me out of that one day, because it's important.
Anthony Scaramucci, you know what our managing... Anthony, let me try and get in a word in edgeways. You know what our managing director, actually James Hurtley and I want to know is, was Trump right? If he shot, could he shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still get away with it?
Pretty close. I mean, I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty clear now. You know, if you go from June of 2015 to where we are today, he has ardent support. You had a 30-year vacuum where politicians were focused on the very wealthy, as Tom is describing, and they were focused on the very poor. What they were not focused on is that sort of lower middle income area or the middle class. And so what I'm writing about in the book, and if you're a Democrat, you should read the book because you should understand how Donald Trump hijacked your base and moved it over to his side of the ledger. But yes, I mean, he's got a group of ardent supporters that a lot of stuff could come out on him, and they don't care. I was there for the Access Hollywood moment. Many of us thought, okay, that was going to be a really bad moment in terms of us not being able to win. And that only happened 28 days or 30 days before the election. Lo and behold, he's the 45th president. So, you know, he's got a lot of Teflon in him. And believe it or not, he has a lot of likability for those people. And I describe why in the book.
Okay, so what would it take for the president to lose support, either from the GOP or from his base?
Well, I would say three things would have to happen. Number one, something cataclysmic related to the Mueller report, which I don't see happening. Number two, you'd have to see some kind of steep recession going into 2020. If you go back to 1880 to today, very hard to dislodge a sitting president in a rising economy. We experienced that with President Obama in 2012.
You were Newsday paper boy. I did the same thing for the Times-Union up in Rochester. My mother ran it like it was a Fortune 500 company. The Democrats that were in the neighborhoods where you delivered pictures are screaming for a different Democrat Party. Will the president be a two-term president if the Democrats don't move away from the Clinton progressivism to form some kind of new Democratic Party?
Yeah, well, the Democrats really need a right-of-center economic...
Where is it?
They need a right-of-center economic person and a socially liberal person to run. But unfortunately, they have a little bit of Trump derangements in them. I write about this in the book. If you just think about what happened to Senator Warren, he shoots at her, gets inside her melon, and then she's running out and getting a DNA test. That's not going to help the Democrats. And so they're moving way far to the left. Gary's laughing on set because Trump has this Twitter. Trump has this Twitter insect light, and he vaporizes everybody once he gets inside.
Okay, but
your melon.
the charm of Anthony Scaramucci is everybody knows you grew up in a blue-collar environment on Long Island, and as you say, the president hijacked that ethos. How do the Democrats get it back? What is your prescription to make this a contest?
They need a different candidate, Tom. They don't have the right. They don't have the right candidates. You name the candidates. I'll tell you how the president. They have 10 bowling pins of candidates, and the president is an orange bowling ball, and he's going to bowl a strike on them.
Is he going to be too old to run a second term?
I don't know. Does he look old to you? He looks pretty tireless to me. I mean, I've never seen anybody with that level of energy. You saw him last night. You saw him the last 4 nights. I don't know what he's doing. He's the only human being that I know that can eat anything he wants. It has no effect on his health, Gary. So I don't know what's going on there either.
Anthony, if there's any doubt about the Fed's independence, what does that mean for treasuries and dollar?
Yeah, well, listen, the Fed is clearly independent. I liked Paul Volcker's statements. I was actually there when we were having the discussion about Jerome Powell. It was on a Wednesday, Gary, because I was only there for one Wednesday, so I do remember it. But I like the direction that the Fed is taking. But let me say this, if the economy starts weakening, when interest rate sensitive areas of the economy start to slow down, the Fed will say something that we're all familiar with. They'll say, well, we're going to move to data dependency, and you'll see them slow down the rate. So it's not 100% clear to me that they're going to get 5 rate moves in the next 15 months because things are already starting to slow down a little bit, and people are starting to get a little bit defensive, and it's being reflected in the market right now.
Help with the shift at the White House. Every administration, it's exhausting. I know you were exhausted by the 3rd or 4th day of your tenure.
I was doing great. Just happened to have a little bit of a potty mouth, Thomas. Well, I was doing great.
You were exhausted. Okay, everyone else was exhausted, and there's going to be a changing of the guard.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you imagine that the president's new bodies will be within the administration? The same or something different?
You mean in terms of personnel?
Personnel.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, and I write about it in the book. I mean, the president made a decision to go with Washington's swamp monsters. I mean, he literally, like Reince Priebus is like a cesspool operator, okay? So you can't drain the swamp if you got a guy in there pouring sewage into the swamp, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully the president will switch dynamic there and hire some people that really like him and want to help him and, create the effective guardrails for the president. I mean, the best relationship with President Trump is when you're polite and respectful, but you're also telling them what's going on and what you really think. Sycophancy is not loyalty. Sycophancy is selfishness, and it's a form of self-survival. And so he needs more people that are going to tell him the truth.
Anthony, which caravan did the Scaramucci's come into this country on?
Well, we came on a boat from Naples, actually.
Out of Naples? Did you come through Ellis Island?
We hit Ellis Island.
Right.
Unfortunately, my father's family went to a coal mining town in northeastern Pennsylvania, and my mom.
So how do you respond to the caravan debate that we see right now? I mean, it's Middle Easterners, it's terrorists, according to the Washington Post. Did they say that about the caravan you guys came in on?
Well, let me say this, okay? If there are women and children in that caravan, which there obviously are, I want everybody to stop and just think about that for a second. There's a mom out there that's taking her young children, traveling thousands of miles, or let's say hundreds of miles, to get to the U.S. border. If you think that that's funded by George Soros, that mom is making that decision with her children, I think that's a very far-fetched thing. And so I think we got to calm ourselves down. We have to dial back some of the rhetoric and get out a little bit of a decoder and get people to relax. So you're not having moms with their kids riding hundreds of miles to get to the U.S. border because George Soros is paying them. Okay, that's a bunch of malarkey, and we all know that.
All right, you've called the president a liar, I believe, yesterday or the day before.
Okay, so can I correct the record?
He knows?
Am I allowed to?
Hold on, but do you think he knows what he's doing? Okay, correct the record, but do you think he knows what he's doing?
Do I think he knows what he's doing? Oh, he absolutely knows what he's doing. I mean, don't underestimate the president. But what I said to the reporter, and John Berman was trying to push me so he could get that clickbait on the air yesterday, is yes, the president is speaking mistruths. Yes, the president is lying, but he's doing it intentionally to incite certain people, which would include left-leaning journalists and most of the left-leaning politicians. And so what ends up happening is they come out like a hall monitor in the elementary school or the junior high school, and they say, oh, wow, the president's lying, and his base is basically laughing at him. Okay, if someone's taking your lunch money in the cafeteria, if you call the hall monitor, it's not going to help you, okay? You got to defeat the person at the table with your peer group. And so that was the point I was trying to make yesterday.
Right.
But I love those guys at CNN. I really have a lot of respect for them. But they were trying to pin me so that they could get a headline that says Scaramucci calls Trump a liar.
All right. So how do you brief the
intentional liar? It's very
right now?
Just being a liar.
Right. So what should the strategy be for the Democrats into the midterms if you were to advise them?
It's a very simple strategy. You have to switch what you're doing. Stop focusing on transgender bathrooms and saving dolphins from plastic straws. Go back into the neighborhoods that I grew up in or where Tom's from and tell those people that you're going to redesign a product to save them and increase their income and give their children an aspirational opportunity in America. I lived in an aspirational working class family. 35 short years later, those very same families are desperational. And the Democrats have got to stop the nonsense of the political correctness and the microaggressions and all this ridiculous stuff and go back and tell those people that were in their base for 60 or 70 years, we're with you. But they're not capable of doing that, and that's why he's going to continue to steamroll them.